Trump is making headlines across the nation by selecting Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to run the Federal Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE for short. This agency is charged with making sweeping cuts to the federal machine to start saving our tax dollars and put America on a better financial path. But did you know that Idaho is complicit in all this waste? We spend millions of state and federal funds to support projects the government has no right to be involved with. On this very show, we highlighted millions of dollars in examples of waste in the gem state. This is why we at the Idaho Freedom Foundation are launching the 2024 Pork Report early next month. This report provides a large sampling of the ridiculous and often damaging things Idaho spends money on. If Idaho does ever get its own DOGE, we are here to offer some suggestions on where to start making cuts on this week's episode of Fiscal Fridays. The Idaho legislature must thwart universities' DEI agenda. If you're a longtime follower of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, this policy recommendation is no surprise to you. Woke culture has co-opted Idaho's institutions for higher education, institutions that are supposed to promote merit, free thinking, and self-sufficiency. We estimate that colleges and universities are spending about $6 million annually to employ 75 bureaucrats system-wide to run their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. This doesn't even get into the cost of office space, supplies, and activities. The legislature made some headway on this issue before by cutting $2.5 million from the colleges and universities' budget. But the institutions doubled down on DEI thereafter and ultimately got their money back in subsequent years. As of yesterday, Idaho's institutions for higher education and the State Board of Education are claiming they are now ending their DEI programs. In other states, similar efforts were nothing short of a PR campaign to rebrand DEI. Thus, it is still necessary for the legislature to pass legislation that defines and ends DEI on college campuses. To completely dismantle DEI, we must keep pushing legislation that would prevent similar offices from taking its place. Another policy to consider is that Idaho must stop funding welfare for the world. Money drives incentives, and if Idaho continues to fund welfare benefits for anyone in the world who wants them, then we sustain an incentive for them to settle here on the government dole. For instance, Idaho spends $45.6 million on healthcare benefits for illegals since 2020. These include prenatal care, postnatal care, immunizations, and treatment for communicable diseases, which, as defined, could be anything from the common cold to lifestyle-related infections like sexually transmitted diseases. Idaho can expect to spend another $10.9 million on illegal immigrants next year if these trends hold. Related is refugee programs furnished through leftist nonprofits like Janice's Agency for New Americans. Idaho spends more than $1.7 million on grants for these programs and services. These programs offer benefits to refugees that are often more generous than those for citizens. It is also a wasteful use of funds. Idaho spends $300,000 annually just to make refugees aware of other nonprofits that offer programs for them. Legislators should take steps to cut these programs from Idaho's budget sheet in 2025. Finally, another policy that is particularly harmful to Idaho families is the state's subsidization of the childcare industry. Through a program called the Idaho Childcare Program, or ICCP for short, Idaho funnels millions of tax dollars into the daycare industry to support so-called affordable childcare. But this program is now facing a $16 million hole in the budget. Why? Because the agency overstepped, expanding the scope of benefits in the program and eligibility of participants without proper consideration of the costs. Instead of holding the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare accountable for this overstep, leftists are blaming the rising costs of childcare for the program's shortfall. But they fail to acknowledge that perverse incentives in the program are actually part of the reason childcare is getting expensive in the first place. Legislators must look into the free market for solutions to this issue rather than continuing to shovel tax dollars into this sinking ship. To close, legislators are looking to make waves with substantial cuts this year. Above, I provided 3 key ideas that, if acted upon, would provide substantial relief to Idahoans and reduce wastefulness. It's essential for constituents to know about these examples to drive their elected officials in the legislature to make changes. But there are countless examples that I didn't have time to highlight here. To get more examples of government waste, be sure to go to idahofreedom.org/24pork to get a free copy of IFF's 2024 Pork Report. Let us leverage transparency to hold the government accountable to the people.